I'm not interested in any paths to power. What I'm interested in is working hard, doing a good job for the district, and coming home proud of the work I did.
I was excited about stepping back from national politics for a few hours, but I guess we didn't. I want to say this. If anybody thinks that Jane's running against Donald Trump, I candidly wish she were. Most of my Democrat friends wish they'd had some more choices, and who the nominee was. As it relates to defining leadership, I've kind of made a career out of it. If you Google search Tom Garrett and Virginia Capitol Press Corps, the Republican Senate leader threw the press corps off the Senate floor for the first time in modern history this year. Do you know who the only person to file a rule change to bring the press corps back on the floor was? He's standing in front of you here today. Because why? Because transparency and openness and a free fourth estate is key to getting what we need done as a people in our electorate. I stood up and fought for that, and I will stand up and fight for that sort of thing in Washington when our leadership is wrong. When there was a leadership fight within the party, I was the only person willing to come forward and stand up for a change in leadership. When I didn't think that the values of the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia were being represented adequately, I was the only person publicly, and I'm looking at the members of the press corps who were there who stood up and said, we need a change in leadership inside the Republican caucus. So I am not afraid of any human being. I am not afraid of anything other than being held account for my imperfections to my Creator when God hits the off button. But going to Washington and fighting against a partisan leaning interest when it's not in the interest of the people in the 5th District is not only something I will do, it is something I will relish. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. You get the first response to the next question. What are your plans to rebuild our military and to fix the VA so that it takes care of our veterans?
Oh, for 2 seconds, we've got a parking issue you'll need to read out.
The parking issue. Blocking field parking, VA VC 74560, and Eddie Baker Ford Explorer, dark red, VA XKC 4214. If you could move your cars that way, they will not be towed.
So the
question again is plans to rebuild the military and to fix the VA.
Yeah, it strikes me when I was in the Army, we had all sorts of systems that were gee whiz, whiz-bang, neato systems that we didn't need. And as I grew older, I started to understand that some of these systems were built and fielded because people in Congress decided that there were jobs coming to their district. But the soldiers and sailors and airmen and the Marines that defend this nation understand what their needs are. We shouldn't be pouring dollar after dollar into broken programs. We should be listening to the military leadership about what the needs of the military are, and those are the programs that we should be supporting and funding and fielding. As it relates to the VA, I believe that you keep the promises that you make to people, whether it is absolutely positively funding Social Security going forward, and we have a concrete plan for that I'd invite you to our website to check out, or whether it is keeping promises to the women and men who wore the uniform of the United States in defense of our nation and Constitution. And it is shameful what's happened at the VA. I will tip a hat to the nurses and doctors of that institution because I hear nothing but good things from my veteran friends, but the administrators are broken. What I would like to see done is an overlay of VA facilities with existing hospital facilities. The cost of redundancy in healthcare drives prices through the roof. An MRI machine is not cheap. 2 of them right next door to each other doesn't make sense. So the VA should be an apparatus to help veterans negotiate the maze of their healthcare needs that falls in on top of world-class medical facilities like UVA, like Martha Jefferson, like MCV, and I guarantee you the civilian administrators in those programs will take good care of the veterans who come in for service in their centers. So we should streamline those facilities, and we should make sure that we walk our vets through the process with every bit of honor and dignity and care that they've earned by putting on a uniform that is tantamount to saying, I'm willing to give my life for something that's bigger than me. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
So we had some common ground on the last question, and I think we have common ground here. Let me explain it, though, just a little bit differently. As I go throughout the district and veterans come to the meetings that I'm having, they talk about the fact that their health care, once they get it, is excellent. That was the tipping of the hat. It's getting the appointments and it's the administration that we have to work on. Now, often the corporate sector does not overlay completely or properly on a public sector, but we have continuous improvement, quality improvement programs that are tried and true in the private sector that really need to get culturally down in the VA. So that's something we can work on. Also, veterans have been saying, especially in this rural district that we have, Charlottesville region and Danville, about it, the rest is rural, that they cannot access appointments or telemedicine, which is growing as a service because they do not have internet. So that's something we are going to have to deploy in this district to help veterans. Finally, we need to listen to our military leaders. They've been telling Congress over and over again, don't appropriate that way, don't make us pay for those things, we need to pay for these things. We have, as just an example, because we use our military often as a jobs bill, we have a fighter, the F-35, that's being built in 50 different states. That is waste, that is inefficiency. I think if we send people to Congress with business backgrounds who will listen to our military leaders, talk to our veterans, we can make changes in both how we fund the military and how we treat our veterans.
Thank you, Jane. It's time for another public service announcement. It appears people have been driving some very nice cars here today. One of them is a Subaru Outback XAJ 3982. One is a Nissan Sentra WVJ 6069. One is a Prius, of course, XET 1427, and one is a Toyota Prius, again, HEP 113, sandwiched in, and emergency vehicles are not able to pass. So if those four owners can check on those four cars to avoid tows. Jane Dittmer, you get the first response to the next question. Environmental legislation has been stalled at the national level. For example, the Clean Water Act was last authorized in 1987. What is your position on the EPA and the environment?
Just what you said is a great example of what is not working in Congress. Congress has passed aspirational goals and then turns over the writing of regulations and the enforcement to the executive branch. We need to tighten down, drill down on the role of legislators. They are supposed to write legislation and they are supposed to stay current, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, as far as the EPA, there's a lot of talk about blowing up the EPA. So why don't I answer this? I'm not for blowing up the EPA. We want clean water, we want clean air, we want to be able to pass a planet on to our children and their children and on that we haven't abused and used and acted like it's a going out of business sale. So to the extent that I'm 100% behind aspirational goals, I think we have some work to do on reauthorizations and tightening up our legislation so that it's current. Thank you.
It's amazing because I think Jane's spot on. Ultimately, if you look at Article 1 of the Constitution, the responsibility for legislation lies with Congress, right? And what we have is a Congress that won't make agreements on things that are important. And so what's happened by default is the president said, well, I have a phone and a pen. These are things I can get done. And so what we have then is rulemaking wherein people can lose property, people can lose their freedom, people can lose money that they've earned by virtue of a regulatory body of the executive branch, which is tantamount to law, as Jane would know as a mediator. And so we have the abdication of responsibility from Congress to the executive branch. That needs to end. And I'll tell you this, the environment's about stewardship. Well, I grew up with 6th-generation English setters. We hunted quail. And when there were so few quail that we could no longer hunt them because of clean farming and pesticides, we paid the farmer who leased our land less or more money to leave the land not plowed, create more hedgerows. I went out by hand and cultivated bicolor lesbeazer, and we cultivated quail that we never hunted because we cared about having them. Stewardship is what this comes down to ultimately, and it strikes me as a little odd when the EPA is responsible for piercing a containment facility out west that polluted literally hundreds and hundreds of miles of riverbed, and nobody's held accountable, right? The entity tasked with protecting our environment has created one of the greatest environmental catastrophes of the last 2 years, destroying miles and miles of riverline in the western United States, and not a single head rolled. Think about that for a moment. So ultimately, Congress needs to legislate, and they need to engage themselves in the important business of the people. We need to wrest that activity from the executive administrative branch, because candidly, you deserve the right as voters to rehire or fire your representatives. It shouldn't be someone who you've never heard of, never voted for, and will never be fired in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Tom Garrett. Next question is for both candidates, and we'll start with Tom Garrett. What is your goal for leadership in the area of improving race relations?
It's so awesome having had the opportunity to serve in the United States military. And I see a number of people nodding their heads. The neat thing, and I think the unique qualification that anybody who served has, is you're thrust into a unit, okay? In that unit are people from anywhere in the nation. The socioeconomic differences between the individuals is vast. The racial experiences of the individuals is vast. The life experiences of the individuals is vast. And yet you're told, this is your mission, accomplish your mission, and do it within these sets of parameters, right? The best way to heal racial relations in the United States of America is to ensure that people of all creeds and colors and backgrounds learn that they can work together on a single goal, a single mission, and accomplish that mission one hand in hand with the other, regardless of what they look like, who they worship, or where they're from. And there ain't no better place to learn that than the United States military. So, I'm not, this isn't an argument in favor of universal conscription, but that might make the news. I just think, the best place to heal race relations in the 5th District is in the cafeterias of our public schools, in the aisles of our churches, in the Food Lion parking lot. When you're walking out of a restaurant, if you can hold the door for somebody and treat everybody just like you'd want to be treated if the roles were reversed, we will see things change for the better. Thank you.
I wish it were as easy as that. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot roiling under the surface that we haven't been paying attention to. And so we need to look at the facts, and we need to identify some problems, and we have to own up to them, and we have to do something about them. When I realized, and I'm embarrassed to say it took me a long time as an adult to pay attention to this, about the vast difference in incarceration rates between whites and African Americans, I was appalled. When I realized how many African Americans were in our prisons, there are actually too many Americans in our prisons, there is a sense of injustice that can only be cured by working on those problems and making sure that we don't revisit them. I didn't understand about voter suppression and the kinds of rules that we have in place that keep people from the polls. I have heard about the pain and anguish in African American communities, and now somewhat in our Latino communities, with the way they feel treated. I wish it were as easy, and I would love for all of us to do what Tom said, be nice to your neighbor, the golden rule. But we have some infrastructure problems, some systemic infrastructure problems that need addressing, and only then can we hope for more peace and less racial tension.
Jane, you get the first crack at the next question. What specific project do you most want to take forward and work on? What is the most important project you intend to take to Washington if elected?
I'm first.
Jane.
All right, so I only have 90 seconds. When I'm in this area and people talk to me about my #1 issue that I want to accomplish, they say, why is this deployment of internet and accessible and good cell service so important? And they ask that question because they have internet. If you look at our 10,000 square miles, this district that is larger than the state of New Jersey, we are worse than a third world country in terms of connectivity. It is holding back our rural families. It's holding back our rural economies. Our children can't do their homework at home. I mentioned that veterans can't access service. You don't know what's going on in government, local, state, or federal, if you can't access the internet. We have small businesses that can't grow. Agribusiness is being left behind. I know actually how we can help state and local government with funds from the Federal Communications Commission that are already allocated, that other congressmen are going out and grabbing up for their communities, and I will bring that back to the Fed. There's a lot of other things I want to work on, but I'm like a dog after a bone on that one. Thank you very much.
So, it's interesting when you learn the 5th District to understand what an economic engine the 5th District was for Virginia for so long. And it's not what it used to be. Tens of thousands of jobs in textiles and furniture have been driven from Pittsylvania County and Danville, from Henry County and Mecklenburg. And they've been driven out largely because of a regulatory climate and a tax climate that absolutely doesn't recognize the needs of those employers and the employees. Economic opportunity is really the paramount issue in this fight, and understanding when economic opportunity presents itself and taking advantage of that is how you solve that problem. Let me give you a couple of examples. The Schutz Brewery wanted to come to Albemarle County and bring 150 jobs there, plus or minus. And there was a zoning application to bring those jobs, and I don't know, over $85 million in investment to the county. The county board of supervisors wouldn't let them do it. And later, Ballast Point Brewery, so Deschutes went to Roanoke. And later, Ballast Point Brewery said they'd like to have come to Albemarle County, but they watched what happened with Deschutes, and they took their 148 jobs and $50 million in investment to Roanoke. And I believe the 6th congressional district. So you have to understand what business needs to succeed. You have to honor individual initiative and work. And you have to create a climate in which businesses can succeed and job growth can occur, which is exactly what didn't happen with Ballast Point and Deschutes when they tried to come bring these good jobs that would have allowed people to put their kids through college to Albemarle County. The issue in the 5th District that will overarch all others is economic opportunity and how to make the south side of Virginia and central Virginia thriving economic